28. Uncle Arthur's Ambition. Ida pressed her nose against Underwood and Son's icy window. Through the display of gravestones and the dark Christmas tree, she saw a sliver of light under the door to the back. Hope and terror jostled in her heart. She took a big gulp of breath to stop the flutters and peeked over the windowsill again. The slither of light had gone out. Had she imagined it? He could be moving Bonnie at this very moment. There was nothing for it. She had to go in. It might be her last chance to save her sister before she was flown off to who knows where. Squatting as low as she could under the window, Ida pushed the door. It was locked, so she reached up for the plant pot by the shop door where she'd seen Mrs. Allenby find the key when she came to clean. Under a layer of moss, Ida felt the cold metal of the poorly hidden key. She checked again for the telltale light. It was still dark, so she summoned all her courage, pushed the key into the lock and opened the door. Not having a brolly to stop the doorbell like Mrs. Allenby, she didn't push the door open for more than a few inches. Ida breathed in and squished herself between the door and the frame. She might not have been slim enough to slip through the orphanage railings, but she could get into Underwood's unheard. The smell of mothballs and the black sadness of the place clung to her. She listened and heard a creak. Could that be Uncle Arthur? She clenched her fists together to gather all her courage, flexed her fingers and wrapped them round the handle on the door to the back of the shop. She turned the knob with a click. At the end of the corridor, the workshop was dark. Ida crept her fingers along the wall to find the crack. 2 cracks, parallel to each other. Another creak. Was that someone upstairs or her own feet on the floorboards? She couldn't tell. The door hidden in the wall was open. Ida felt tingles on her arms, little prickles, not of fear, but of warning. She had the horrible feeling it was all too convenient. But Bonnie had to be here. Ida couldn't stop now. She slipped inside. Ida stretched out her arms in the dark. She touched splintery wood like a tall chest of drawers. But there were no drawers. It was a box, on top of a box, on 2 more boxes. 4 boxes stacked up on each other. And in this place, there was only one kind of box they could be. She felt for the edge of the top coffin, searching for a gap between the lid and the box. What if there really was a dead person in there? Ida ran her fingers along one long side. They dipped into a little hole, a little round hole in the wood, then another and another. She tried to push her finger through the hole, but her finger was too big to see if there was a body inside, and Ida very much hoped a soft, warm, alive body. Bonnie, are you there? Oh, baby, is that really you? It wasn't Bonnie's voice. The muffled whisper had a soft foreign accent. What's your name? Ida whispered back. Sophie. Be careful, he will come back. Is anyone else awake in there? No, he gave them Ovaltine. I knew what it was. I pretended to drink it. I'm getting you out. Ida felt round the edge of the coffin again, pushing hard at the splintery wood, but the lid was nailed down. Perhaps if she could just slide something in between the lid and the box. Think, Ida, think. She could make out a desk against the wall. On the desktop she felt papers, a pen holder and a bottle of ink. She was looking for a paper knife which she could slide between the lid and the coffin. But instead, her fingers came across a switch on a lead. Over the desk she felt the cold shape of a brass lamp. Dare she turn it on? Just quickly. He had to have a knife somewhere. Light flooded the desk. A letter on a blotting pad was smudged. Her hand was smeared with the black ink. She couldn't see a knife, but what she did see on the wall made her frown heavily, like someone was pressing on her forehead, willing her to understand. On the wall above Uncle Arthur's desk were pictures cut from the newspaper, all of them, of a man who was like the Prime Minister. No, the President of Germany, Herr Hitler. She'd seen this man on the newsreel when she went to the pictures to see Laurel and Hardy. He'd stood in front of a huge crowd of people with his arm outstretched as if ready to press them into the earth. like the opposite of a blessing from the vicar. But in these pictures on Uncle Arthur's wall, he wasn't with a crowd. He was with children, and in most of them with one child, a pretty little girl presenting him with a bunch of flowers. And most often, a pretty little blonde girl, like Bonnie. The flutters started over her heart, high in her chest, wings beating to escape. She swallowed. She must find a knife, get the awake girl out, get them all out. But then she noticed some lines in the smudged letter. May I offer you my own daughter as a perfect example of the Aryan ideal? I enclose documents to prove her suitability. And from underneath the letter, she pulled the crinkled sheet that was Bonnie's missing birth certificate. Under father, it no longer said Tom Barnes, but Arthur Underwood. Ida's head, like a tangled ball of wool, struggled to make sense of what it meant. The doorknob cranked, and suddenly the room was filled with light. Ida shut her eyes and scrunched every muscle as if that would make her invisible, but that was never going to happen. He was back, and it was too late to hide. Ida, I was wondering how long it would take you. If you could just understand that I'm only trying to do what's best for Bonnie. It would be so much better for both of you if you just let me get on and do that. Uncle Arthur's words slithered from his mouth like black treacle. Ida turned slowly to see him in a black shirt, grey horse-riding trousers, and black boots up to his knees. With a cup of tea in his hand, he leaned against a fifth coffin, open and lined with silky material, standing up on its end. Da! A bleary-eyed Bonnie in a long white nightie squeezed between Uncle Arthur and the doorframe. Bonnie! With tears brimming in her eyes, Ida crouched and reached for her little sister. Bonnie dropped her teddy, a new one, and ran to Ida, wrapping herself round her. Da, you are coming too! We're going to where it's always Christmas and there's lots of toys to play with. That's right, isn't it, Uncle Arthur? Ida swept her up. She forgot where she was and everything that was happening. Her face was wet. She couldn't speak. She could only bury her head in Bonnie's golden curls and breathe her sister in. Still clinging to Ida, Bonnie pulled away a little. Da, aren't you happy? Ida was doing everything she could not to sob. Uncle Arthur stepped in. Of course Ida is coming, Bonnie, my dear. Now we have an early start in the morning. Go back to bed until I call you. Here, drink this. I've put some extra sugar in. Bonnie kissed Ida's cheek, obediently let go and took the cup Uncle Arthur offered her. It wasn't tea. Bonnie, no! But it was too late. Bonnie had drained the cup. She stumbled to the door and fainted in the little golden heap. What have you done? Ida tried to scoop her sister up, but Uncle Arthur swiped Ida away with the back of his hand. Ida felt the heat of it on her cheek as she fell against the edge of the desk. She launched herself at him, her fists flying. Leave her alone, you wicked man! But Uncle Arthur grabbed Ida by the shoulders and held her effortlessly at arm's length. A pity. Such a shame there's not enough Ovaltine for you to while away the hours until the inevitable. Mum knew you were bad. She said we didn't need your help. She knew about you and your black shirt. But she didn't tell you, did she? If she'd had just a little longer, I think I would have won her for the cause. No one wants another war, apart from the warmongering Jew. The only way to prevent one is to eliminate the inferior races and strive for the Aryan ideal. Uncle Arthur raised his head and pointed, as if he was standing before a crowd like Herr Hitler. Then Ida realised that was exactly what he wanted. He wanted to get in with that man, and he was using Bonnie to do it. Ida shook off Uncle Arthur's grip on her shoulders, dropped to the floor and tried to lift her sister. It won't work! She's not really your daughter. They'll see through it. Bonnie, wake up! She shook Bonnie, but she was sound asleep. Not when they see her, they won't. Look at her. Bonnie was truly angelic. She even glowed, a bit like Robert. Ida could see why they thought Robert might do, but he was a boy, and Herr Hitler obviously favoured girls. She should have been mine. Your mum should have been mine instead of wasting time with your pathetic father. Don't you dare! How dare you say that about Mum and Dad? And again Uncle Arthur grabbed her shoulders, but this time he had her in his vice, and as easily as if she were a naughty kitten, he threw Ida inside the empty coffin and slapped the lid in place. Ida kicked and pushed and leaned with all her weight against the padded lid, but Uncle Arthur was too big and strong. It wouldn't budge. I wouldn't do that too much, Ida, my dear. I hadn't quite got round to drilling the air holes in that one. It was meant for your sister, or let's say half-sister, before I realised she's excited enough to come with me of her own accord. Teasdale, where are you? I need the hammer and nails. From somewhere, but muffled by the silky fabric that lined the box, Ida heard boots stomping. Here you are, sir. Put your weight against here. But that one ain't got holes. I know, just do it. Ida pushed again, but Bill was as strong as Uncle Arthur. The box juddered, and the thud of the hammer, the bang went through her head. Ida pushed with her shoulder, but with each thud her pushing had less and less effect, and the banging banged deeper and deeper inside her skull. Oh, why did she not think before she lashed out at Uncle Arthur? Why didn't she stop Bonnie drinking the Ovaltine? Why hadn't she told the girls where she was going? Ida knew why, because she never stopped to think. And she wanted to show the girls that she didn't need them, that she could rescue Bonnie single-handed. Where she'd been so cold, she was now hot. Breathing was hard work when there was so little air. This was it. She'd failed. Why had she got so uppity with the girls? Not once, but twice. It had only led to disaster, and they were only trying to help after all. Perhaps Ida had learned her lesson, but she'd learned it too late. Every breath was getting harder and harder to find. What will happen to Bonnie now? She thinks she's going to have a lovely time. Maybe she will. Maybe she really will grow up in a land where it's always Christmas. If Ida was going to die, she was going to die thinking of that, and trying with all her might to push out the cold, accusing voice telling her that she had failed Mum. Not only had she failed her mum, the jostling and rocking of her coffin and the thuds and scrapes of wood sliding on wood round her told her that she was failing those other children too. Mr. Underwood, what do you want to do with this one? Ida felt a thump on the coffin side. Bury it. Uncle Arthur's voice dripped with disgust. What, with her in it? Asked Bill. Yes, of course, with her in it. What if I gets caught? It will be far worse for you if I catch you not doing as I say. Right you are, Mr. Underwood, sir. The coffin tipped. The lump in Ida's throat became a boulder. She couldn't swallow it. She thumped on the coffin lid, but she could barely move her arm, and trying only made her more breathless. On second thoughts, take the others first, said Uncle Arthur. She'll be a lot less trouble when she's a dead weight. All Ida's muscles relaxed, but she had to face it. The stolen children were going, and she was dead, or would be soon, with Mum. Perhaps Ida should just concentrate on that thought. But what would she say to her Mum when they met? She heard the clank of doors and the faint rumble of an engine in Underwood's backyard, and Uncle Arthur's voice. Now get going, and remember, any slips will not go well with you or your brother wherever he is. Ida's chest ached with the struggle for breath. Every breath she believed to be her last. Silky threads from the coffin lining irritated her nose, and there was nothing she could do about them. She had a sensation of drifting awake, then not awake. It wasn't horrible. It was more like drifting in and out of this world. She expected that was what happened when you died. A door banging open made her jolt awake. She had no idea how much time had passed. So was this it? Was Ida Barnes going to be the first girl in Netterfield to be buried alive?